Episode 222 of the White Cat Outdoors podcast. Bring you to the table while we talk about the outdoors. Well, we're back on our predator bullshit. And this week, instead of talking, hunts that we've had, we decided to take a step back and go over the equipment we're using. I don't think we've really dove into, the specifics because if you're getting into coyote hunting, one, this episode is going to be great for you because we show you that there's a much cheaper route to get into coyote hunting than you might see online if you were to join, a local predator hunting group. Price of thermals is absolutely astronomical. You can spend as much as you would spend on a used car for a scope for your gun. But we're here to tell you that that's not necessarily a need. So this is a, budget getting into coyote hunting episode. We hope you guys enjoy this episode and that it's informal, and hopefully you guys can learn something from here and get you guys going outside. So at that point, I'm going to quit rambling and let's get tuned in to this week's episode.
I pull up my bow and then I look dead at his antlers. I got out of the truck and when I slammed the door, I heard gobbles all around me.
Let's see it.
Alaska, moose, spot and sock. That is the bucket list. I agree.
White Cat Outdoors. White Cat Outdoors.
Hello, gang. Welcome to the table. Gang's all here today. Nick, Tom, Austin.
You betcha.
Hello. Glad to be in the studio.
Yeah, we're all happy to be here. We were sitting here talking right before we hit record, and we were thinking about what we wanted to talk about this evening, and we realized that we've been talking about coyotes a lot lately, and fox, just predator hunting in general, and realized that we had not gone over literally anything about what everyone's setup is, what everyone's using. So if you're interested in getting into this sort of thing, then you might want to stay tuned into this episode because Nick's got all kinds of stuff to talk about. Tom's got all kinds of stuff. Austin, they just got everything going on.
Yeah, because I think anybody that's considered getting into night hunting, coyotes and stuff, there's a progression through it. You're going to start with your red lights, and then you start getting irritated with red lights like we did. So you start looking at what's next, and then you go to night vision, and then the top is your thermals. But there's some different price points within those categories, so we decided to, let's kind of break these down, give our progression, and maybe help save some people some money getting started. Personally, in my opinion, skip the red light phase. That's just my personal opinion. I think Tom would agree.
Unless you're just hunting fox.
I know a lot of people that are very successful with lights, but you have to do it correctly.
Yes.
It's a lot easier to do the night
path
vision.
Yeah, the path to success is much quicker starting with night vision.
You'll call coyotes in with lights too. But I've seen firsthand the reaction time you have when using lights is way less.
Yeah.
You'll have guys tell you that coyotes can't see red light. That couldn't be further from the truth.
No, I mean, we've many times you put that light on them, and you better be ready to shoot.
Yeah, they see it.
So I guess just to start, we years ago when we just started, dipping our toes in the kiddie pool, I guess you will, started with the red lights, and just cheap red lights that came, in a kit. You could buy a red light that snapped to your gun. It was probably $80 or something. And you could just take, when we first started, I think Tom was using a 270 because we didn't really have guns that were set up for, we were deer hunters and turkey hunters, so we didn't really have the calibers that you would typically see for coyotes. But like I said, we quickly realized that it was hurting our success. You'd go to flip the red light on, you had to be ready to shoot right away. Coyotes were taking off. More times than I can count, we would have coyotes coming in, and scanning with a red light's tough. Because if they're not like in range to shoot, all you're seeing is just eye glow. And is that a rabbit? Is that a deer? Is that a coyote? You don't know. So it was very difficult for us to get to success. So Tom and I really started looking at the night vision, and at a quick glance, night vision is extremely expensive. It's several $100s for a new scope. You're sighting in a gun. You're all this stuff. So Tom and I ended up finding these attachments that you can put on your gun. That essentially, your standard scope that you would have mounted on your gun. It's a camera that sees night vision that attaches right to the end of the scope, and then projects your crosshairs onto a screen. And they range anywhere from about $100 to $250, $300. So pretty cheap. They come with a light that's okay, but we upgraded our lights to a brand called Wicked. Wicked lights have about the brightest infrared light that I've found. I mean, even in the daytime, so the light actually goes from red, green, white, or infrared. And in the daytime, I can see my light hitting trees at 300 yards.
Yeah.
Like, it is a very bright light. So the scope attachment I ended up getting was a list of letters. I can't pronounce the name, so I will pull it up here real quick. And Austin's actually running the same one, but it's OWLNV. It's a night vision scope. And that one, what's cool about that one is it actually does come with a light built right into it. And that's Austin's running it with just the standard light. And it's actually really, really bright. He can see several hundred yards. But the drawback to it is it kills the battery really fast.
Yeah.
And that's only if you're using the light and the screen as well. And you just switch to the light.
So I have that external light. I don't use the light that's on the attachment. And Austin's switching batteries throughout the night, just like in a few sets, where I'm on 2 nights of hunting on the same battery without running that light. So I think it's worth upgrading to an external light. But what's cool about these kits too is they almost all of them that I've seen have an SD card port, so you can actually record your shots if you want to. It records audio, and all the ones we're using now shoot in 1080p, which is pretty clear. I mean, it's not 4K or anything, but
1080p is still pretty.
It's pretty clear, and it's a huge jump from the 720. Because the first one I bought was 720, and at 150 yards, you were shooting at blur. I didn't really care for it, so I saw the one Austin bought, and saw Austin's one time, and I was like, I'm gonna get one of those. But yeah, so that was kind of like the first upgrade we made, and then to our guns, I guess.
Yeah.
And then Tom, I'll turn it over to you to talk a little bit about your upgrade that you purchased, so we didn't have to keep scanning with red lights.
So yeah, I figured, if we're out there, we have night vision scopes, we don't need light to see. It kind of defeats the purpose of having night vision if you're still scanning with a red light. So we wanted to go completely no lights, and to do that, I decided I was going to get, it's a thermal monocular, just a thermal scanner, and that's what we use, so you can see what's out in the field. And you can spend anywhere from $500 to $6,000 on a thermal scanner, and it's one of them deals, you get what you pay for. You can get thermal scanners that at 500-600 yards you could count the whiskers on the coyote. Is that necessary? No.
Let's do it anyways. It's sterile and I like the taste.
Basically, all you need with your thermal scanner is to be able to tell that you have a coyote out in the field.
Yeah, you're just looking for that heat
before
signature.
it gets into shooting range. Yeah. And so the one I went with, it's an AGM type in My model, it's the TM10-256. And I want to say that one was, when I bought it a couple years ago, it was like $800 or something. So
and they've come down quite a bit in price since then.
yeah. And it's got black hot, white hot, red hot, and fusion. It's just different settings. Basically, the black hot is everything looks like a white or grayish color, and except what's given off the heat signature is like jet black, so it really stands out. White hot, opposite, everything's gray or black, except for heat signatures are white. And it's pretty good. It can pick out, like I can see there's something out to 700-800 yards. You won't be able to tell what it is until it gets inside of 200 yards. But what's nice about it is, and if you spend enough time in the woods, you can tell how different animals move. Like a coyote does not move like a deer does or like a rabbit does. And really the biggest things or the most common things you're going to see when you're out night hunting is deer, raccoons, possums, rabbits, and fox or coyotes. And they all move totally different. So you can tell by the way that heat signature's moving, probably 400 or 500 yards. You can have a pretty darn good idea of what it is. And like, your raccoons, they'll have like a big arch back when they're walking. You can tell size pretty good. Rabbits are obviously hopping. Deer are slow. A lot of times they have their head down. If you're out in a field, they're probably grazing. So what we do is, if I have any questions on like, oh man, I think that might be a coyote, you just turn your night vision scope on. And
with the night vision scopes and stuff, you can clearly see what's out there with your night vision at probably 400 yards.
Much farther than we care to shoot.
Yeah, absolutely. And so like like Tom said, if you're gonna make the switch over to a night vision scope, I don't know that they make. I mean, you could use your scope as a scanner, but hunter safety course practices and stuff is you don't swing your gun around.
Yeah.
So we opted for, like Tom said, to get the thermal to scan, and that keeps us in total darkness. I guess somebody may decide to jump on here and say, oh, infrared does have a little red glow. Yes, there is a tiny little red, and it's just internal on the light. It doesn't project
anything.
And we've been using the night vision for 2 years now, and I have not had a single coyote alert to night vision. So I don't think that that's an issue. So the thermal is a game changer. And like Tom said, you can get into that realm for a few $100, under $1,000. I believe the scope or the thermal scanner Tom bought, it was new at the time, and that since it's that same one's around $600. So it's not, terribly bad. I mean, everybody, you know what you can afford and stuff, but that's it, to me, based on what you could spend, it's a pretty reasonable price and gets you out there hunting.
And hunting efficiently. It's not like a bottom of the barrel thing that's going to suck and you're not really going to be able to get any use out of it.
No, it works great. Obviously, like I said, you're not going to be able to count whiskers at 600 yards, but do you really need to?
Probably not.
No. I mean, I get maybe if you were getting into long-range shooting where you were wanting to shoot coyotes at 400 or 500 yards, but around here, there's really not fields that are that big. I could see how it could be an advantage out west.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but around here, there's very few spots you can shoot 400 or 500 yards.
Yeah, so I guess a little bit, it depends on the area you're hunting and, what your limitations are terrain-wise.
But yeah, with mine, I can clearly, inside 200 yards, you have no doubt that it is a coyote. Outside of 200 yards, you can get a pretty darn good idea based off of how you're seeing it move across the screen. And then out at 600-700 yards, something's out there. But
yeah, there's one more thing I wanted to touch on.
Tripod.
Yeah, that was another piece of equipment I wanted to talk about. So, Tom, I will again turn to you because you're the one that kind of turned us onto these tripods. Well, I guess we'll start with first was the Primo's has a I can't remember the name of it, but it's a tripod.
It's like the Jeremy Shockey edition.
Yeah, and basically it's one grip on there that you can adjust it height and
Trigger
everything.
stick, I
Yeah,
think?
trigger stick. Yeah. And those are great. That's what we all started with, and Austin's still using them, and it's a really nice tripod. But recently, Tom was able to try out a Bog Death Grip, and I think they're a little bit more money than the Primos. If
They're
not,
about
One, it was like, what, 150?
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're
Which
actually
is not
same
bad
price.
for a tripod.
Yeah.
yeah, and especially so the difference between the Primos and the Death Grip, the Primos is just a V notch that your gun's just setting in, and it becomes a little bit tough for Tom as the person scanning to like have to hold on to the gun the entire time. So that's kind of what got Tom interested in the Death Grip, because it's got a clamp that just clamps onto your rifle, and the gun will just stay wherever you last leave it.
Well, you guys have ARs too, so a lot of tripods or bipods you can get that hook to pick rails.
Yes, you could.
So
This one doesn't. It's just a clamp. So you could, what's nice about that is because we do hunt New York sometimes, and we have to switch over to a bolt action, and it still will just
Easy
grip
enough
on.
to
Yeah, so
take on
it's
and off.
universal. Again, look at what your limitations are for the area you're in.
Yeah.
But granted, the Death Grip is a much heavier tripod than the Primos. The Primos is like you don't even know you have it. It's very light. It's it's a very nice tripod. But Tom and I both switched over to the Bogs just because it was a little bit easier, and I'd like to get a scanner eventually, and it'd be nice to have.
Yeah, for me, like that Primo's tripod, as far as like deer hunting goes, is hands down my favorite tripod. I take it with me. If like I'm in a tree stand that doesn't have a shooting rail, I'm taking that tripod with me. If I'm walking through the woods, I'm taking that tripod with me. But for coyote hunting, it didn't quite serve the purpose I need, because I'm trying to hold my gun underneath my armpit while scanning, and you can't scan 360 doing that, and it's kind of a pain. So with these Bog Death Grips, you clamp your gun in and you're totally hands-free. I can work the remote, I can scan, I can spin 360, and believe it or not, if you're going to get into coyote hunting and you're going to be the one doing the scanning, I would recommend doing some shoulder workouts, because I know it probably weighs a pound, but if you're doing 45-minute sets to an hour sets, and you got your arm held up to your eye and you're scanning for an hour straight, your shoulder really starts to burn.
Well, that was another thing I wanted to touch on of what we were missing when we were scanning with red lights. I just wanted you to touch real quickly on the importance of scanning constantly and what we probably were missing in the early days.
Most of the coyotes that we call into the field.
Yeah, that was one thing when we first started. And again, like when we first started, we didn't know anybody else doing this. So we really didn't have a whole lot of guidance. So Tom and I would hunt with red lights, and we would be running the call, and every few minutes we'd flip a red light on, scan the field. Oh, nothing. Okay. And a couple minutes go by. Oh, scan the field. Nothing. Tom gets this thermal. And
No, well, after that, we learned that you're supposed to be scanning the whole time. So
Yeah.
I got a headlamp that I used, and I mean it worked all right. We called in some coyotes, but you have your red light, and that basically is your camouflage. And because you have to have them super dim, basically all you're trying to do is illuminate their eyes, just so you can see something's coming. And then when you do call one in close enough to shoot, then you turn that off, or I mean, I guess you could leave it on. Then you turn on your scope light, which is a more high-powered focused light, and it seemed like when you hit them with that is when they knew something was up, and they'd take off running. And I mean, you don't have to have them super light or super bright, but you have to have them light enough to where you can see your
Identify what
target.
you're looking at.
yeah. So it's very important that you're scanning the entire
All the
time.
time.
And Tom, even, as soon as we closed the doors on the truck, you were scanning the field. And multiple times we've seen dogs before we even got set up. They're already out in the field. We haven't been able to, make a shot or even an attempt on any of those yet, but just to give you that idea that they are out. Like, and you wouldn't see that without scanning from the truck.
Yeah.
I mean, when we walk in, every 10 yards, Tom is stopping, scanning. Okay, clear, move again. You know, keep scanning, and it's amazing how often you see them before you even get set up.
Yeah.
Tom, you mentioned that you having this death grip allows you to use the remote. What the hell's that?
Oh, the remote or transmitter, to be more technical. And basically, we run it's an electric call. We use the Fox Pro X1, and basically it looks like a megaphone, just a speaker that you put out and you download. I think on ours we can download 300 sounds.
Up to 300 sounds, and it came with like 150 when you buy it.
Yeah, we need
Granted,
to delete most of those.
75 of them are nothing that do with predators. Turkey gobbles and elk bugles and barn animals. But so yeah, at the time when we bought that call, it was like the top of the line call that Fox Pro offered. And they've since upgraded to more high definition sounds and stuff. But I'll be honest, the past few nights we've been out, we've been hearing a lot of coyotes off in the distance. We've been having trouble getting them to come in, but they're out there, they're calling back, and it sounds just like the call. I mean, it's a very nice call. They don't offer it on Fox Pro's website anymore, but I believe you can still pick it up at like Shields, and they're like $350 versus like the new upgraded version is the X24, and those are like $500-$600.
The only thing I will say I don't like about the X1 is the antenna on the transmitter.
Why is that, Tom? Why don't you like that?
It's just not real durable, in my opinion.
You break a few of them.
Just one.
Yeah, that was last weekend. It's just got
It's
this
a
like
telescopic. You got to pull it in, pull it out, pull it in, push it out.
Yeah.
And you do that a couple hundred times, and it
Eventually
wears out.
you kink it after a while. So it really cuts the range down on the transmitter when you kink the antenna. So
luckily that was on our last sit.
Yeah.
The sun was coming up, and I looked at Nick and I said, all right, let's get out of here. Time for bed.
Yeah, it was about 7 a.m. We'd been hunting for like 11 hours straight. That was a haul, but there was just dogs everywhere. They were all denned up. It was hard to get them in. But
the ones that we did get to come in, stuff happened, but we won't go into detail.
Yeah. We'll have a redemption episode eventually.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I guess, it's tough to really get into. There's so many different calls. You can't really even.
Yeah, there's so many different brands, and every brand has 6 different levels of calling.
I would say when it comes, if you're gonna buy an electronic call, I would we're not sponsored or anything, but I would highly recommend Fox Pro. They're made right here in the USA. For us, they're right in Lewistown, Pennsylvania. So for customer service and stuff, that remote, was we had an issue, called them up. They said it should, ships the next day, should take a day or two to get it. So, I called Monday morning. We should have a new call by this weekend, or a new transmitter ready to go. So it's nice to have to not depend on like Chinese sources.
Yeah.
I'm a big advocate for spending my money here in America if I can. There's certain things like your cell phone. I don't think there's a cell phone out there that's made in the USA.
No.
But anywhere that I can spend my money here, I absolutely try to. And Fox Pro is one of those ones that is made in the USA.
And like Nick said, we're obviously not sponsored, but one of the nice things about Fox Pros is you can download MFK calls, which we've seen firsthand are top tier brand for calls. They're made for killing.
Is that what MFK stands for, Tom?
Yeah. I actually just learned that the other day.
No. I was on their website and I picked that up last week. So that's those. And I'll be honest, when Tom and I first got started, we were like, oh, whatever calls came on the call would be plenty.
Yeah.
But coyotes do get smart. They learn calls, especially with, you run. I'll just throw one out there, like cottontail distress.
Yeah,
that is every single person ever that's coyote hunted is probably throwing cottontail distress out there. But what's neat about MFK is they've, broadened out the sounds. I mean, they've got, coyote fighting a raccoon, coyote killing a rabbit. They've got specific coyotes that are penned up that they use, you can literally buy a call from, it's the same coyote, but they'll record him at 1 week, 2 week, 3 week, 4 week, 5 weeks, adult, when, this certain coyote's in heat, the different howl that it'll make then, and like all these different things. And it just makes you able to paint the picture so much better, I think. And Tom and I have noticed a huge uptick in responses since we switched over to those calls. So just a little bit of information out there. The calls do add up pretty quick. You pay per call.
But that's why
we
you
go
get
to work
into it
every
with
day.
a buddy.
Yeah.
And you split the cost.
We were talking about that.
convenient.
Our buddy Sharpie's big into coyote hunting too. And we were up at camp hunting with him, and he was like, yeah, I didn't realize like how much nicer that would be if I could just cut all of my costs in half. So Tom and I can just, buy calls, whatever, remote repairs, whatever we got to do. It's good.
Yeah.
It's been pretty sweet, but it just wanted to go over some of the equipment because it's a little overwhelming at first when you look into it and you go onto a forum or something or a Facebook group and everybody's using $10,000 thermals and it's like, wow, I can't afford that. I guess this is just a rich man's game.
Yeah.
Granted,
It
I'm not saying that it's cheap to get into, but you can lighten that blow quite a bit. One, if you've already got, a 223 or a,
Everyone's got an AR anymore.
yeah, pretty much. Yeah, exactly. Almost everybody's got an AR.
Like the biggest hidden cost is gas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
A
buddy.
lot of driving.
And gas station snacks.
Yeah.
Because I'm sorry, you work full time. Tom, I think everybody here is working out and going to the gym and stuff. So you start your mornings, at 4 a.m, getting up, working out, working all day, and then driving, all night long coyote hunting. I don't know how you could do it without caffeine unless you were using Coke. It's Coke or caffeine. So we're real.
Caffeine's a lot cheaper.
So I hear. So we're pretty, we usually, first stop is always the gas station, load up on a bunch of coffee. I'm an advocate for meat sticks. Tom doesn't really like when I...
caffeine and meat sticks?
No, but I just...
You gotta have some truck snacks.
Yeah, got to have a truck snack. So pickled sausage and meat sticks are what I go for.
That's a mistake.
It's not, but you're entitled to that opinion. So, and then usually about halfway through the night, we'll stop again, refill on coffee and caffeine and whatnot. And but it's been a blast, and it does really make you worthless the rest of the weekend when you coyote hunt every night, but it's all worth it. It's a blast. So, yeah. So hopefully, if you're looking into coyote hunting and stuff, this episode helped you, gave you a few pointers to get in on the lower end that are still, a good quality product. But yeah, so on that note, we just gave you guys all the tools to get outside.
You didn't want to ask me if I had anything else I wanted to say.
No, because
you
the last
do
month,
every week.
and the last month, you've always said, no.
Well, I do this week.
Go ahead, do it.
The one time you don't.
There's actually.
All right, sorry, that's all the time we had. No, I'm just kidding.
I wanted to touch on the huge debate on sitting versus standing. When
Is that a huge debate?
Yeah, it's really kind of taken over the internet right now.
Really?
Taking it by storm.
So bad that I haven't even heard about it, huh?
Yeah, well, 'cause if you remember when me and you first started, we were sitting on the field edge. We were always sitting on a field edge.
Yeah, I had that little Predator chair from Cabela's,
Yeah,
and they suck.
they're comfortable seats.
I'm not out there for comfort.
But we have, like Nick said, progressed through our predator hunting because we never really had anyone show us the ropes. It's all been trial and error. And for new guys getting into it, you might not realize the difference of visibility you get sitting versus standing. And when me and Nick first got into it, we're thinking, oh, we need to tuck ourselves into a hedgerow or something so we're camouflaged, we can't be seen. So that's what we were doing. And on a lot of the fields around here, they're relatively flat, but you're sitting down on the ground. If there is a little bit of elevation change, you might only be able to see 75 to 100 yards.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it doesn't take much elevation change to hide a coyote or
Yeah.
a fox.
And if you're in that same spot sitting and you stand up, well, maybe now you can see 250 yards. It makes a huge difference. And you don't have to be tucked into a hedgerow or in a bush or something.
You just can't be skylit.
Yeah. Coyotes can see better than a human at night, but not a lot. And most of our sets were standing in the middle of an open field. And we like to have something behind us, whether it be the terrain change or a tree line. I mean, the tree line could be 70 yards behind you. Just something to break up your pattern so you're not getting skylined.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for that interruption, Tom.
Yeah, no problem.
Well, I guess we'll do this take 2. Get outside.